Life is a series of ups and downs, wins and losses. And sometimes all we can see is what's right in front of us. The next hurdle, the next goal, the next challenge. But there are moments when we realize that our triumphs and our struggles, our victories and our defeats have brought us to this very moment. And it all comes down to this.
Well, good morning. Welcome to church. It all comes down to this, folks, right here. And I tell you, I know that we have the Super Bowl is next week. I'm excited about it. I know that there are some of you in here who could care less. A show of hands? Yes, thank you. You can leave. No, just kidding. Please don't leave. No, we have, the Super Bowl next week. I know it's a big deal for some people, and for a lot of people, it's like, who cares? It's a big old fuss. But the thing is that it's a big deal in our world, and it's a big deal in our community, and it's a big deal in people outside of the church make a big deal about it. And I'm a football fan, more of a football fan than a baseball fan. I think I've shared that in here before, but I love it. And the thing that I love the most about it is this time of year, because it all comes down to this one game. Like, it's like baseball. It's like best out of 50 or whatever championship. I don't know. It seems like it. But it's like baseball lasts forever. It's like the best out of 7 games. Come down, the championship game is a week long or 2 weeks or whatever it is. It takes forever. Or basketball is the same way. It's the best out of 7. You got to play all these games. It's always go to 7 because they want more money. But whatever it is. But the Super Bowl, it all comes, like all of the marbles, it's all right here. It all comes down to this one game. Like all of the struggle and the practice and the games and the wins and the losses and the playoffs and all of that, it comes down to one game for all of the marbles, and I love it. And I think that's why it makes it so exciting. And really, when you look at our Christian life and our spiritual life, really the choices that we make, and what I want to talk to you about this morning, are the things that we do really all come down to one thing. I mean, church and what we do at church is important, and I don't know if you guys have ever really stopped to think about why you come to church. And a lot of us in here probably have been in church our whole lives or have been around church. Some of us may not. Some of you may be here and you're not a real big church goer, and that's cool. That we love that. But I want to talk to you guys as a church this morning a little about what happens inside these walls, who we are as a church, who is Salem Grace as a church. And so, because it really all comes down to the fact, all of this that we do at church and all of the music and all of me up here and whatever, and all the screens and all the lights and everything else that we do around this church, it all really comes down to one thing. And it comes down to, do you love Jesus? Do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ that can change everything? And so really, that's what I'm going to talk to you about this morning. I want to talk to you about the church, and I don't know if you've ever really thought about, why we do things at the church, and why is it so important for Christians to live in authentic relationships. And I looked up the word. One of the things it's a church word that we use around church a lot is fellowship. Well, welcome to the fellowship. Some churches are even named Christian fellowship or whatever, but fellowship is a big word, right? So what is fellowship? And I started to look at that, and I looked at the Greek words in the New Testament for fellowship are translated to actually mean the partnership to the mutual benefit of those involved. It's a partnership to the mutual benefits of those involved. Therefore, it's mutually beneficial relationships between Christians. So when you think about fellowship, we think about, hopefully, when you come into this place as a church, you find mutually beneficial relationships with other people that are like you, people that are struggling with the same things, or people that are going through the same things in life, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're just people you connect with, and maybe people we learn. And so church is really more about just coming in here and sitting down at a pew, and really this building in Salem Grace is more than just a place on North Broadway, south of the sale barn, and on a windy north day you wish we weren't. But it's more than just this place. It's more than just this building. It's more than what people talk about. Let's say I go to Salem Grace. Each one of you are the church. We collectively together make up this place. And what we do with that is important. And how we treat each other is important. And so what we do inside these walls is critically important. So I want to talk to you about that. And so, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what next Sunday is going to look like and why we're doing that. But when I was looking at the scripture on the inside, what should be happening on the inside of this church? And I was looking at a scripture in Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47, and we're going to walk through this a little bit. But basically, in Acts, it's in the New Testament. It's in the back of your Bible, and just so you know, that the New Testament's in the back. The New Testament was after Jesus came, and really just kind of we shared the New Testament about what Jesus taught us in the New Testament. And so in Acts, you have these 12 disciples who were followers of Jesus Christ, these people that basically, they were really the start or the beginning of what we now call the church. And so we have an image of what that early church looked like, and the things that they did, and the things that places they went, and the things, how they conducted business inside their walls of a church. So I want to look at that. In Acts chapter 2, verse 42 through 47, it says this: all of the believers devoted themselves to the apostles, teaching and to fellowship, and to sharing meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And so we're going to get into the meat of the scripture here pretty quick, but I underlined some words. So it says, all of the believers met together. So the first thing they did, what did they do? They met together. So everybody can just get your little checklist out and check that off today if you're here. I met. Hey, we are meeting together. Isn't it fun? Okay, I don't know. I'm having fun. It's kind of fun. It's what you make it. Okay, so they were meeting together in one place. We're all in one place. We're all right here at Salem Grace. And they shared everything they had. So everybody get out your wallets. I'm serious. No. They shared everything they had. I need to borrow somebody's truck. But they sold their property. Let's keep going. They sold their property and possessions and shared money with those in need. Basically, they were missional. They went out and said, hey, who in our community is in need? And let's share that. It was biblical. Verse 48, they did what? They worshiped together. Okay, what we just did, we sang, we worshiped. If you did not raise your hands and worship, you're missing out. I'm telling you. If you don't invite God, and all you got to do, if you're worried about people around you, I've told you this before, but when we're worshiping, all you got to do is close your eyes. Nobody can see you. Just raise them. Lift them up. Get them up there high. See, wash some windows. But we worship together. And if we sing through those songs, and if you listen to any of those words of those songs today, you're a good, good father. It's who we are. It's who I am. We're loved by God. It's who we are. You have to worship. They worship together. And keep going in verse 46. They worship together at the temple each day, every day. They went to church every day. Starting tomorrow, I'll expect to see you all back. We're going to do it every day. But they met in homes. That's something we do. Is anybody part of a grow group? Anybody in here part of a grow? We got a few people part of a grow group. Or a small group, youth group, small group. Yeah. They're like, don't call on us. But we're part of a grow group. They met in homes. They met with people. And if you're part of a grow group at Salem Grace, you're getting involved with the people. It was something that the early church did. They met in home for the Lord's Supper and shared their meals with great generosity, all the while praising God for enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And this last verse is what I want you to pay attention to. And each day, the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. How awesome is that? Every day, God added people to their fellowship and to their church that were being saved. How awesome is that? Wouldn't that be awesome if we had a church where people were getting saved, they were finding Jesus Christ, and their lives were being changed forever? That should excite us. That's something that we want to have happen here. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about that. I want to talk, if you look at this early church, this is what should be happening inside of these walls. And I can tell you right now, if we're not seeing people saved in our church, if people aren't coming forward and saying, hey, yeah, I'm asking Christ into my life, I need change in my life, and getting baptized and being saved, we're not doing it right. We're just having church. We're just playing church. We have to be about people finding Christ. That's why we're here. That's why we come. Hopefully that's why you come. If it's not, and maybe it's not. Maybe you just come here and going, I'm just here. Whoa, that's not why I'm here. I'm just checking it out, man. I'm not saying to anybody. But we think about that, and we think about what happens in these walls. And so they experience fellowship. So what we learn out of that passage, they experienced fellowship. They hung out We were meant to hang out together, people. I'll be over later at your house to hang out. But we were meant to hang out with people. And I'm telling you what, if we announced a potluck, we can potluck like nobody's business around here. Like, we are on point with the potluck. We know how to potluck. We know how to hang out with each other. We do that well. They were all together. They consistently met with each other. They enjoyed being with other. They didn't come out of obligation. They didn't come out of, I got to go to church. I don't really want to go. I ought to go. I really ought to. I really don't want to go. They got something out of it. They gave and they got and they shared with each other and they prayed with each other. They took care of one another. They were missional. They worshiped together. They met in homes. They ate together. The Lord added to fellowship those who were being saved. And it really only church, what we do here at church, really should be about nothing else but seeing people saved and come to know Jesus Christ. It really only comes down to that. It's one game for all the marbles. It only comes down to reaching people for Jesus Christ so that they can walk into this place and so that somebody that is unchurched can walk in here and go, man, this is really, I feel good being here. I'm not going to have somebody that looks at me weird. Maybe because I'm tatted or I have piercings or I have something else or I smell funny or I cut my hair a different way. Or maybe I was face down drunk last night. I don't care. Just come. Be a part of this place. That's what we need to be as a church. That's what should be happening inside these walls. Those are the types of things that happened in the early church, and that's what's happened in church. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. That means basically we as Christians, or the so-called church, need to be building relationships with people that are unchurched. There are people outside of this place. When you walk out of here and you get in your car, you're going to drive by people, you're going to work with people, you're going to run into contact with people at the grocery line that don't know Jesus. And they are unchurched. It's mind-boggling to me that we have these people that are out there. And so what we have to do, what I'm challenging you this morning, is to build a relationship with some of those people. Does that mean you have to carry a Bible and whack them in the head with it and say, you're going to die and go to hell? No. That's not what we're about. We're about reaching people out to say, hey, listen, we hang out. You want to go hang out? You want to do something? You want to go get something to eat? Invite somebody over for dinner. And as iron sharpens iron, we begin to build relationships with people. And then eventually, we're going to have an opportunity to say, hey, let me tell you about Jesus. Let me tell you about what he did in my life. Let me tell you about who he is for me. And I want to show you a video clip here real quick. It's a guy you probably recognize. He probably doesn't need an introduction. He'll introduce himself on the video. But you'll know who he is because if you're a Cardinal fan, you will anyway. But I want to drive this point home and to hear what it means for people to pour into other people's lives. Let's listen to this video.
I pretty much remember most of my childhood with the baseball, playing baseball. We spent most of our free time at the baseball field. I had always sensed God's presence and didn't really know what that looked like. And as I got out of high school and into the minor leagues, I had a lot of great influence and some older guys that I played minor league baseball with. Two that come to mind, husband and wife, were married. My wife and I were engaged. They just invite me over for dinner, and just a good example of what a Christian marriage and being a Christian was about. I thought, you know what, I think I know what this, I get it. Following Jesus is what I want to do. In the 2 months that we spent in St. Louis after I got traded over and seeing some of the teammates and some of the guys around the organization and experience the fans and how we were treated, that's where we wanted to end up, but you never know if it's going to work out that way, and it was pretty stinking clear that that's where we were supposed to be. You've got a manager like Mike Matheny, who's a great role model. He's somebody that I look up to. He's got 5 kids. They are great kids, and just seeing how that they've raised their kids. And so I've got a chance to play for somebody that I consider, a mentor, as somebody that I can really look up to. I mean, like the last 2 months of the year, when I knew Lance was going to be probably headed somewhere else, I said, Lance, let's just sit down and I want you to just give me some of your knowledge. I mean, the guy knows so much about the Bible. Let's just have some dinner every road trip, every night. Let's just go down and talk about the Bible, and I want you to walk me through some of the things that you've learned from the elementary level all the way up. I want you to just throw up on me everything you got. And so guys, like experiences like that I've had in St. Louis, and even now we've got a bunch of younger guys that are new to the faith a little bit, and so you start to see your role sort of move in a different direction. Whether it's just get together and watch the Bible series on DVD and with a bunch of guys and just invite everybody, hey, we're going to watch the second episode or whatever, or honestly dive into the Word, and it's been cool. I feel like both of us have kind of taken on a bit of a spiritual leadership of some of the team, and we don't get to go to church that often except in the off season, and even then we're doing things here and there, and you're leaving for Thanksgiving, you're leaving for Christmas, and so our church is baseball, and we feel like we've been called to the ministry of baseball, and we feel like that you can make an impact not only to the young believers but to the non-believers, and set an example of, hey, we love you. I don't care that you're not a believer. Come to my house and eat. That we could be as Christ-like as possible so that they might see Jesus through us. The times when I'm not constantly pursuing our relationship with Jesus are the times when it's baseball, it just beats me up. When I'm chasing after him, it's not, I have peace, and I have that peace about me. I'm just praying that God, just give me peace, whether it's good or bad. I don't know if the results are good or bad. I just want to have that peace that I can get in the box and give you the glory.
Pretty cool testimony. I tell you, and I think, if we're honest with ourselves, many of us have had people in our lives that have poured into our lives. At some point in time as Christians, we've had a person that has thrown up on us. I love that part when he said, just throw up on me, man, teach me everything you know. But I tell you, that's what we're called to do as a church. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're an unbeliever. It doesn't matter what you believe, or if you believe something else. Just come in here. Let us hang out with you. And that's really what we're about next Sunday. I'm going to challenge you guys to do something next Sunday, and to really challenge you to be thinking about who it is that you want to pour into the life of. And so here's the thing. As a church, as I wrap up my thoughts on who we are as a church and what we do inside of here, Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16 says this: "You are the salt of the earth, but what good is salt if it loses its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house." And we just sang that song, we're a city on a hilltop. We're a light in a city. My question for you this morning is, are you salty? Are you salty as a church? Or have you lost your salt? Have you lost it? Have we lost our flavor as a church to go out and tell people who we are and share that faith? How are the relationships that you have? And we look at that, and here's the thing. If you look at salty as a church, and I have to think about this, and hopefully our church is better than this, but I was looking at some statistics this week about churches. Statistically, study that was recently done, only 2% of church members actually invite an unchurched person to church. When is the last time you have invited an unchurched person to this church? Probably some of you can't even remember. Some of you maybe say it's today, and they're here with me, and that's awesome. But only 2%. So out of a church this size, and last Sunday I think we had like 571 people here. Out of 571 people, that means about 10 people, maybe 11, if you round up, actually would invite an unchurched person to come to church. It's mind-boggling. I would like to think as a church we're better than that. But I have to believe, if we really believed, if we were sitting in here professing Christians, if we really believed that Jesus was the answer and that he could actually change your life and make it different and work out the details and make it better and give you peace that's undeniable, that we sang in the song, peace so undeniable I can't even contain it. I can't even think about it. I can't even think I have so much peace. To give you that kind of peace, if we really truly believe that, we would want to share that. I would think as Christians, we would say, oh my goodness, give me a chance. Just give me a chance to invite you to my church so that maybe I can build a relationship with this guy or this girl, and then they can come to know this Jesus that I know that has done such wonderful work in my life because you're a good, good father and you love me right where I'm at. He didn't love me when he didn't wait to love us when we were all cleaned up. He loved us while we were sinners. You don't have to have it all together for Christ to love you. If we really believe that, we would want to share that, I would think. I think sometimes as a church, it's just comfortable and safe, We get comfortable, we're like Bubble Boys and Girls. You ever seen that movie, Bubble Boy? That's what we're like. We're like Bubble Boy. We're like, oh, we want to stay in here. We want to stay in our little bubble. It's nice. We have our church friends, and we go out to eat with our church friends, and we have small group with our church friends, and we do everything with our church friends because they're our church friends, and it's safe, and we're a bubble boy. I don't want us to be a bubble church. We can get out of the bubble. You're not going to get dirty. It was a funny movie. He just kept this kid in the bubble because he was afraid he was going to get this sick and die and go. We got to get out of our bubble and quit being bubble boys and girls. We have to figure out that this is not an exclusive club. Anybody can join. Jesus paid all of our dues. None of us earned our way in. Church is people, and we figured out how to fellowship. We can potluck. We can do all these things as church. We can come in here and we can sit, and we have to be willing to think of more than just ourselves. And so I'm going to challenge you this morning. And, we had district team day, and I know a lot of you guys don't know what that is, but it's a thing for pastors on our church district. And we had a speaker that came, and he planted a church in Oregon, and he's doing really great things. But he had a quote yesterday that he shared with us, and I want to share it with you. It says, "Found people find people." Think about that for a second. I had to think about it. I'm not too quick. Found people find people. Blessed people bless people, and served people serve people. So I'm going to ask you this morning, are you missional? How are your relationships outside of here? Philippians 2, chapter 4 says, don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. Have you taken an interest in anybody this week? When you think about what Jesus was done, he was compassionate. He cared about who people are, people he came into contact with. Let me ask you a question this morning. Is there anybody in here that believes that Jesus could raise somebody from the dead? Anybody? Show of hands. Hey, go ahead, lift them up. Don't be shy. It's not worship. You're going to be okay. Sorry. It was a jab. I'm sorry. Most all of us believe in here that Jesus could probably raise somebody from dead. If Jesus came in, somebody was dead, Jesus could say, hey, get up and walk. He's done it, right? It's in scriptures, right? Who in here has a friend or knows somebody that is so far off the deep end, you think that guy would never go to church? Okay, some of us have those. You don't have to raise your hands. I want you to think about that person this week. That guy, that girl you work with, that person that you know is just like, oh my word, if they walked in the church, there would be like, oh, did you see who's here? One of those. Don't you love those? Did you see who's here? Could never believe it. Never thought he'd be here. Think about that person. If you believe Jesus can raise the dead, why can't we believe as a church that he can reach our community? He can reach the person out there that's unreachable. Cheryl said something earlier. It's like if you have an empty seat, that's a problem. That is a problem. Because we have a ton of people out there, outside of these walls in Salem, that need to know Jesus and need to be sitting next to you. I want to show you another video real quick. And this is another guy you'll probably recognize, Matt Hasselbeck. He's a quarterback in the NFL. But listen to his story real quick.
I was at church one Sunday, and the preacher says, okay, close your eyes. Think of the person in your life that God just can't reach. They're too far gone. And I thought of this friend of mine who's just really cynical and God's not going to reach this guy. I know it. And so he's the guy I thought of. And preacher said, okay, if you thought of someone, your image of God is way too small. He can do anything he wants to do with anyone he wants to do, through anyone he wants to do it with. And ironically, 7 days later, that guy came up to me and was like, hey, I need to talk to you. My wife asked me if I would go to this church 3 times. What do you think? I'm like, well, what do I think about what? And he's like, well, I've been 3 times. I kind of want to go back. And I'm just like, my mind is blown right now. This is crazy.
I love that story. You know, that one person in your life that God can't reach. Test him. Pray for that person this week. Give yourself an opportunity to invite that person to church next week. And we want to provide that opportunity. But I want to ask you this morning, how are your relationships with those that are far from God? Church has become a place for the church. I think church has become this place where you come to church and we use church language and we talk about stuff that a lot of people don't understand. And and you may be one of those people. You may be sitting here and go, you know what, I come to church and I can't understand a word. I don't get it. I don't know any of the Bible stories. I've had people tell me that. And the thing about, what's interesting, I'm like, I'll talk to people and I'll say, hey, why don't you get in a grow group, or why don't you get involved in a grow group? And they're like, man, I really don't want to, because you know why? They're intimidated by church people. We're intimidating. We've gotten to the point where we are intimidating to the unchurched. That's a sad place. People don't want to come to church because they're like, man, I don't know all the Bible stories. I don't know about David and Goliath. I've actually had people tell me that. I had some guy tell me that I prayed with, and I had a chance to pray. He felt God doing something in his life, and I prayed with him, and he said the most beautiful sinner's prayer. And then when he said it after I was talking to him, he was like, you know what? He's like, I don't know. He's like, it was almost like he was scared to tell me. He was like embarrassed or scared to tell me. He's like, I got to tell you, and he kind of whispered it. I don't know anything. I don't even know Adam. He's like, all I've ever heard of is Adam and Eve, and that's all I know. And that's okay. I want this place to be a place, and we're gonna. So when people don't want to get a grow group, they don't want to be the one guy sitting in the grow group, and everybody's like, "Oh, remember when Adam and Eve did that?" And they're like, "I don't have any clue. I'm clueless." And some of you may be right there today, and I just want to tell you that's okay. We're going to actually start another class. It's called Starting Point for our church. We can teach you that stuff. That's not a big deal. You can learn that. It is a big deal, but you can learn it. What's a big deal and what it all comes down to is your relationship with Christ. And whether or not you've come to a place where you've decided to hit your knees and ask God to forgive you of your sins and take control of your life and start experiencing this thing called Christianity that is mind-blowing. That's what it all comes down to. And I think sometimes we as church people, we think about that, and we lose sight of what goes on. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, and if you wonder if you ever ask somebody about church and they're like, I ain't going to that church, you can, whatever. I'll leave that up to you. Fill in the blank. But here's what's going on. This is what the Bible tells us what's going on outside of these walls. 2 Corinthians 4:4 says, Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. They are unable to see the glorious light of the good news. They don't understand this message about the glory of Christ, who is in the exact likeness of God. Satan has one tool, people, and it's deceit. It's lies. That's the only tool, that's the only weapon he has in his arsenal, is to tell you lies, to lie to you, to deceive you. He's the deceiver. He deceives people. 1 Corinthians 1:8 says this, the message of the cross is foolish to all those who are headed for destruction, but we who are being saved know that it's the very power of God. If you're here today and you've experienced that salvation, you know what it feels like. You should be willing to share that. So the other passage I have real quick I'm going to share with you, and I'm going to work through it. It's in Matthew chapter 9, 35 through 38, and it says this. And the heading in this part of the scripture in my Bible is the need for workers. The need for workers. It says this. And this scripture, I kind of shared with you what the early church looked like in Acts, right? How they fellowshiped with each other, they prayed for each other, they looked people in the eyes and said, hey, I'm praying for you. I know you're going through a hard time. Let me get out my wallet. Let me help you. That's what the church does. That's what being a part of a congregation like this is supposed to look like and feel like. When we care for each other's needs and we all are on one same page and we're walking down this road together. We're not all perfect, but we're figuring it out together. That's what inside this looks like. Jesus gives us a picture in Matthew. We get a picture of what it looks like outside and what we should be doing outside of these walls when we leave this place. And it's in Matthew chapter 9, verse 35 through 38. And it says this, Jesus traveled through all of the towns and villages of that area, teaching in the synagogues and announcing the good news about the kingdom. And he healed. I can't read. And he healed every kind of disease and illness. When he saw the crowds, get this, he had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. When you see people outside of here that don't know Jesus Christ, are you compassionate? When you run into somebody who just disputes everything that you believe and are unbelievers and they're lost and they're saying all kinds of crazy stuff, do you trash them on Facebook? Are we compassionate? Do we say, hey, I'm going to accept you where you are, even though you don't believe, and even though you're like this and this is where you're headed, I still love you. That's what Jesus did. He didn't care. They hung him on a cross, for crying out loud. He didn't bash them on Facebook. Probably wouldn't have even if he could. He had compassion on them. Had compassion on people that were not of like mind. He loved them. He wanted to be around them. He surrounded himself with them. He had compassion on them because they were confused and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. He said to his disciples, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest and ask him to send more workers into the field. So what did he do? He proclaimed good news. He went around telling people, hey, there's a better life. There's a better way to your life than what you're doing. This is the good news. You can be saved. He had compassion on people and took responsibility for them. He responded through others. And what I loved about that story at Matt Hasselbeck, he's like, God can do anything he wants through anybody he wants. He can use us if you let him. He can use you. Every one of you sitting in here, I know some of you are like, yeah, he ain't going to use me. He will use you. If you let him, he will use you. Last week, I preached a message on going. Talking about my story, and sometimes it's easier to stay when you need to go. I'm telling you, we need to go. It's time to go, church. It's time to go out there and find people who don't know Jesus and invite them to church. Go into your workplace. Are you going to go into your workplace? Or are you going to go into your neighborhood this week? And ask somebody. I'm going to ask the band to come up and play. Are you willing to go? Are you willing to go into your workplace, to go into your neighborhood, to go into social media and invite somebody to church, to go pick somebody up and bring them to church and say, hey, I'll meet you at the back door. I'll save us a seat. Next week is your opportunity to do that. It's going to be different. It's going to be unlike church. You know, we went to this conference yesterday that the district had for us, and this guy was a great speaker. And he challenged, he said he sat down with his staff at his church that he planted, and he challenged the people that were on his staff when they were trying to build this church. They all sat around the table and he asked them one question, and it was this. What's the color of the paint in your neighbor's living room? What are their kids' names? How well do we know the people that are around us? Get to know them. I challenge you this week to get to know those people. Outside these walls are unbelievers that are searching for an answer that we hold in the palm of our hands. People are hungry, and people are hungry for something different, something real, and something they don't understand. Another statistic for you. 82% of the unchurched people are at least likely to attend a church if invited. Isn't that something? 82% of them said, hey, if somebody would invite me, I'd probably come. Another statistic, 7 out of 10 unchurched people, 7 out of 10, 70% of unchurched people say they have never been invited to church by anyone. Isn't that sad? That we have people out there saying, hey, we'll come. We're waiting for an invitation. I'm waiting for somebody to ask me to go. Be interesting to see in this morning how many here, and you don't have to raise your hand, but if you want to, how many is here because somebody invited you? Awesome. There's hands all over this place. I want you to stand this morning. I think the thing about this, and it all comes down to this, and I was gonna kick off, I had to change some stuff this morning at the last minute because God checked my heart. And I wanted to actually send off this, I wanted to hey, we're not gonna do an invitation at the end. I told Jeremy that. I was like, I'm just gonna send everybody out and woohoo, let's go get them type of, charge. But I heard God speak to me, and I just believe that probably there's somebody here that has not yet come to know Jesus. And it really all comes down to people getting saved. That's all I care about. So in a minute, I'm going to ask Jeremy to sing that song, Good, Good Father. And when we sing, I want him to sing the last verse of that. And it talks about peace. That's unexplainable. If you want to experience that today, take a step out and come to these altars and pray. And I know people are intimidated by these altars. I get it. You don't want to walk down in front and have everybody go, oh man, I don't want to know people what he did, These altars are here for a reason. And the guy yesterday spoke and said something that I'd never heard about the altars. You don't have to come to these altars to ask Christ into your heart, but I tell you what, taking that step out of your pew, especially if in your middle, and you're walking out, you're stepping away from where you are and going to somewhere different. Don't be afraid to step away from where you are and give it a whirl, because really it all comes down to this. You could care less about any of the rest of this stuff. The only thing that's important is that you find a relationship with a good, good Father that loves us unconditionally, loves us exactly where you are and exactly what you are doing today. He doesn't care about where you were last night, doesn't care about if you were face down drunk, if you were stoned out of your head. He doesn't care. He wants you to come to this place. So sing, Jeremy.